Good morning and welcome. My name is Natalie Bright and I serve as the Shawnee Chamber's Governmental Affairs Consultant, and it's my honor to moderate today's forum for Senate District 10. On behalf of the Johnson County Public Policy Council, a collaboration of all 10 area local chambers of commerce, and particularly on behalf of today's co-hosts, the Lenexa and Shawnee Chambers of Commerce, thank you for joining our candidate event featuring Kansas Senate District 10. I'd like to begin by sharing the format of our forum this morning, which will include a 2-minute opening statements by the candidates, a moderated question and answer period, which the candidates will have 1.5 minutes to respond, followed at the end by a 1-minute closing statement. The format, questions, and time limits will be the very same for every candidate, and there will be no follow-up questions, formal rebuttal, time, or audience participation. Candidate speaking has been randomly determined with the candidates and will rotate throughout the program. So if now everybody will quiet your cell phones, we'll get started. Kansas Senate District does cover Bonner Springs, Lake Quivira, and parts of Lenexa, Olathe, and Shawnee. And now I will introduce our candidates alphabetically. So Andrew Mall is the Democratic candidate and is a lifelong Kansan who attended Shawnee Mission Schools before earning a degree in marketing and international business at Kansas State University. Andrew's been a realtor for 20 years and has served as president of the Kansas Association of Realtors. He lives in Shawnee with his wife and business partner Nicole and their 2 sons. All right, Mike Thompson is our Republican candidate. He has spent nearly 40 years in broadcasting as an award-winning meteorologist. He studied meteorology in the Navy and then after graduation was assigned as a weather observer forecaster aboard an aircraft carrier. Mike and his wife, Leanne, of 43 years, has 3 children and 10 grandchildren. They attend St. Joseph Catholic Church and have lived in Shawnee since 1983. All right, we're going to get started. Mike, you drew the number 1, so you will have the opportunity to do your opening statement. And again, you have 2 minutes.
Okay,
so,
thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
Of course, and thank you for having us, by the way. We appreciate it very much, the opportunity to speak out and explain our positions. Many of you know I was in the broadcasting industry for 40 years and also in the Navy prior to that. But what you don't know is in the last 6 years since I got out of broadcasting, in addition to being in the Senate, I also started 2 businesses, one of which is a consulting and speaking business. The other is teaching kids about science and weather. In fact, we developed a nationwide online program that we're selling, and we have students from Alaska to Florida and from Maine to California. I also have, I've been appointed an executive director of 501c3. During the time period, I took and passed the Series 6-6, Series 7 test to become a financial advisor. I also passed the state insurance test, so if I wanted to, I could sell insurance right now. I'm a policy advisor for the Heartland Institute. I'm on the education committee for the CO2 Coalition. And so in addition to all of that, I've served as your senator for the past 5 years. I've served on 6 committees. I was previous chair of the Utilities Committee, current chair of the Federal and State Committee, which is one of 3 exempt committees in the Senate. And I think going forward, my big push is going to be toward lowering income tax, dealing with the property tax issues in the state, focusing on the existing small businesses in Kansas, budget reform, performance-based budgeting, dealing with the achievement levels in schools. Energy issues are huge. People don't think about those very much, but we need to ensure the reliability of our base load in this state and push back against the EPA mandates from the Biden-Harris administration. Government accountability, transparency, and efficiency are going to be huge. In all areas of government, we need to improve that. And I think that's going to help a lot. And I hope to be able to continue my work in the Senate for the next 4 years.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, Andrew, your turn. You have 2 minutes.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the Chambers for hosting today. It's an honor to be here and have an opportunity to speak. As Natalie mentioned, my name is Andrew Mall, and I'm running for the Kansas Senate District 10. I'm a father of 2 amazing boys, ages 12 and 4, and I am a husband of more than 21 years to an incredible woman who also happens to be my business partner. I am a small business owner and have been for more than 23 years now, and it's a passion that I developed growing up in and around the district that I'm running for. I actually got my first job in the district cleaning cages and walking dogs at an animal clinic at the age of 12 to help support myself and my mom. I went on to get myself through college at Kansas State University by working various jobs. It's actually where I met my wife. And we ultimately decided to move right back here to a place that I call home. So needless to say, Shawnee, Senate District 10, I hold near and dear to my heart. It is a place that I call home, and I think that I'm very much a part of this community, and this community is very much a part of me. And that's what got me into this race. As I've been knocking doors and talking to constituents, even before deciding to run, I just heard a disconnect between their current representative and what the voters and people of Shawnee, Lake Quivira, Lenexa, Olathe, and Bonner Springs want. And that is sensible solutions to their challenges. They want to help their fellow Kansans. They want their neighbors to live their lives authentically, and they certainly want their elected officials to listen to the people that send them to Topeka. And I want to be that voice. I want to make sure that we advocate for Senate District 10 and what the people want in our district. And I want to focus on economic growth to help our economy and to lower taxes for hardworking Kansans and strong public schools, as well as keeping our government out of personal private decisions.
Okay, great. We're going to move into our moderated question and answer session. Andrew, you drew number 2, so you do get to start this first question. What are your views on state tax policy, being as specific as you can?
Sure. Well, being a small business owner and understanding what I'm hearing at the doors, the middle class and the working class are definitely feeling the crunch. The cost of everyday essentials is going up, and folks feel that. And my policies would focus more on economic growth. I definitely think we should stay away from the brownback days. The flat tax was a horrible idea. And I'm glad that we were able to come to a bipartisan agreement on a different tax system because it would have definitely crippled the middle and working class. It's hard to say that you're putting 79 cents worth of a tax savings in, say if you're making $80,000 filing jointly versus 10 times that amount when you're making, say, $180,000 in filing jointly. So we don't want to go back to the brownback days. My focus would be on economic growth.
Okay, Mike, same question to you. What are your views on state tax policy, being as specific as you can?
Well, obviously, we want to help people with the inflation and the crunch that they are feeling, and which is why we offered up 7 different tax packages trying to lower the income tax rate to help working parents, working people. We did obviously get rid of the Social Security income tax at the state level, which we thought was necessary. The property tax issue is huge. We've got to cap valuations in property tax. We've attempted to do that through a constitutional amendment. I offered up an amendment to the tax package that would exempt the first $100,000 of your valuation from the state 20 mil, statewide 20 mil property tax. We also wanted to increase the homestead exemption, bring that up to $500,000 on valuation and increase the income. So we're doing everything we can to try to help working Kansans and also the retirees in this state by doing so. And I think the governor stripped all of that out. In my opinion, she did not really want to give tax relief. She wanted to do stuff for an election, which was the Social Security income tax, but there needs to be a lot more. The single rate tax also would help people a lot, a lower single rate tax. We're not competitive with surrounding states at all. We're losing population because of our tax policy in this state. And if we want to be competitive, if we want to draw more small businesses in, we've got to lower those tax rates and bring a single rate tax to Kansas.
All right, question 2, Mike, we're going to stay with you.
Okay.
What are your views on K-12 education funding and accessibility?
Well, we did fully fund the K through 12 education with our package this last year, and we increased the spending on the special ed funding. We have a constitutional duty to make sure these kids achieve and that they do the best that they can, but the achievement level has been problematic in the state of Kansas. We've got a large number of kids who are not operating at grade level. And so we need to change the accountability by doing two things. We need to scrap the at-risk funding that we have in this state right now, because what it's doing is allowing the locals to game the system by identifying an increasing number of students as at risk, so to speak. And when you do that, they're using it more for administrative costs. A lot of it's not getting down to the classroom. For example, in Shawnee Mission District, there was a 23 or 5% increase in students, but they had a 23% increase in spending in the administration, and just a 1% increase to the teachers. So again, it's not getting to the classroom, and I think we need to scrap that and have a more accountable system. We also need to get rid of the social emotional learning pedagogy, which is failing. That's been in place since 2012, and start going back to more of a classical education. Make sure these kids can read and write and perform basic math so that we can develop our workforce and they can come out and get a job.
Okay, great. Andrew, same question. What are your views on K-12 funding and accessibility?
Well, as a proud graduate of public schools and a proud parent of public school students, I think our public school system is doing a great job. I don't hear from neighbors or folks that are going to, say, Ray Marsh or Trail Ridge Elementary that the schools are failing them. As a matter of fact, as a realtor for over 23 years, the number one thing I hear about why people move to our area and put down roots is our public schools. They want to make sure that they remain strong. And so I'm hearing that folks want to fully fund them, including special education. And what happens is it becomes a political talking point in Topeka. And there's a shell game that's played. And I've heard from districts across Johnson County, including Senate District 10, that when they claim to fully fund the general education fund, but yet leave gaps in special education, the entire budget fuels that gap to the tune of millions of dollars, which impacts every single student in our district. My opponent has voted to institute vouchers, which would decimate our public schools, and they are the backbone to our communities. And he's also voted to take away, or not to increase funding to pay teachers more. We have the highest rate of teacher attrition. We need to pay them more. We need to attract more talent so that our future workforce can be educated. And we need to keep the government out of the experts field, which is the curriculum side of our schools.
Okay, our next question, we're going to stay with you, Andrew. What types of economic development policies do you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, economic development and growth is essential. As a small business owner and operator for more than 23 years, I understand that the economy helps drive growth. And if we are having recessive policies that restrict growth by voting against things like the Panasonic plant, which my opponent did, voting against things like legalizing sports gambling, like my opponent did, then we're not focused on growth. I think the term is, stepping over a dime to pick up a penny. As a small business owner, I definitely don't want wasteful spending, and I have been trained for more than 23 years to identify wasteful spending, and I think we could cut some of that, but we need to be focused on growth as opposed to restricting it.
All right. Mike, same question. What types of economic development policies do you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas?
Well, we don't focus enough on supporting our existing businesses in Kansas. In fact, we give giant billion-dollar giveaways to foreign companies who don't have roots in Kansas. And when we do that, and we also fund their training of new employees, what we are doing, and this is why I voted against the Panasonic deal, we are forcing the existing businesses to compete for the same labor pool, but we're giving a leg up to this giant billion-dollar corporation. And these are just not simple decisions. What we can do is we can lower the regulatory burden in the state of Kansas for existing businesses. For example, there are a number of businesses who have to pay sales tax before they collect the actual money. they may have outstanding receipts that they don't receive for 30 days, so they have cash flow problems. Something as simple as giving them a 30-day grace period to pay that state sales tax would be enormous for a lot of these small businesses. Just things like that make a lot of sense. I also voted against the sports gambling, by the way, because the way the bill was structured was absolutely ridiculous. We could have made 10 times more money on that if we'd done it a different way. And I voted against that because we weren't doing it the right way. So a lot of the things that we vote against, there's good reasons for it because they don't make economic sense. But in terms of supporting small business, we've got to do more.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to talk about workforce, which is important to business. What would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce? Mike, we'll stick with you.
Okay. First of all, there's some things you can't do. Work ethic is a problem for a lot of the small businesses around here. They'll try to hire someone, they might last a week or two, and then they quit. You can't legislate that sort of thing. Again, for small businesses, it is recognizing that they're having to compete against these big corporate giveaways, the corporate welfare that I vote against consistently. And so what we need to do is lower the property tax rate and the income tax rate so that these businesses can be competitive. The property tax rate, remember, on businesses is on 25% of the valuation of the property rather than 11.5%. And so they automatically, when there's a property tax increase, pay more. And that makes it difficult for them to pay more for the employers, to offer better compensation packages so they can draw employees in. We also have to do a better job. KPI with education. Kansas Policy Institute, for example, came out with a study here about a month ago that showed only 19% of the students in this state can pass a college entrance exam with a C or better. So we are not doing our best with education, which is why we have to scrutinize what we're doing at that level so we can develop more students to stay here. Plus, lowering the tax rates would also keep more people in Kansas. We are losing Kansas young people to other states with lower tax rates.
Okay, Andrew, we'll stay with you. What would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
Well, specific to actually growing and developing the workforce, I would focus on them. I think our tax policy is focused on the wealthy as opposed to giving more money back to hardworking Kansans back into their pocket. And so we should focus on them. We should also focus on educating them, and so fully funding our public schools, including special education, as I mentioned before, because that is our future workforce. And what's driving young folks from our state is the regressive policies, the partisan politics, the extreme agendas that our legislature tends to focus on. And instead of working for the people of our district and, say, expanding Medicaid so that we would create 20,000 new jobs, much of which would be outside of the healthcare field, and tell other employees and employers that we actually care about our workforce. That would be one significant thing we could do for our workforce to bring more and retain more of our workforce for the future.
Okay, Andrew, we'll stay with you on this one. What are your views on the state's role with respect to ensuring access and affordability of post-secondary education?
It's critically important. As we just talked about, it is our workforce. And right now, we aren't doing enough to tell our educators that we want to take care of them. And so we're not attracting that talent. So we should take care of our educators. We should also make it easier for folks to go to VOTEC schools and secondary education, post-secondary education schools to make sure that they're being trained here in our state. And then we should encourage them to stay by making sure that our economic development and our tax policy is focused on them.
Okay, Senator.
Well,
Go ahead.
Okay. Our post-secondary schools are businesses. You have to understand that. And they haven't been running like businesses. For a long time, the financial aid and the student loan programs allowed them to continue to make bad decisions because they were flush with cash and they could raise tuitions with impunity. But what we've seen lately with the Kansas Board of Regents is they are starting to implement some metrics to scrutinize programs to cut, to make them more business and friendly and more efficient. Emporia State's been doing a very, very good job of that, increasing their efficiencies and looking at programs that are under-enrolled classes, for example. They've also been able to get rid of tenured teachers who aren't performing and approach this as more of a business. If you can bring the cost down of running these universities, you can eventually bring down the tuition rates. The demographics in Kansas are changing. We've got more and more, again, people who are leaving Kansas, young people who don't see the opportunity here. They are shifting their focus from going to college to these tech schools, so it is reducing the funds to these colleges. And so they're going to have to be more efficient in how they run their business and their business model. KBOR paid a consulting firm to scrutinize some of these programs, but with the exception of Emporia State, none of the other universities followed the recommendations of those recommendations that they came from that the KBOR group that they hired. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike, we're going to stick with you. In this question, we're going to switch gears a bit, so it's a little long. There has been a lot of discussion about foreign land ownership and leasing, as well as purchasing equipment containing foreign manufactured parts. What factors do you consider when attempting to balance national security concerns against free enterprise and private property rights?
Well, a lot of that went through my committee this year. We were trying to deal with foreign ownership in Kansas, and so I worked with the Attorney General quite a bit on that one, and I felt like he had the best solution, which was create a state land council which would vet foreign ownership in the state of Kansas. It would not prevent foreign ownership at all. It would just vet those who are purchasing land and also prevent purchases near military bases and things of that nature. With regard to the technology, we tried to pass a bill, and I carried it on the floor to get rid of the Chinese technology in the drones. Unfortunately, too many of our law enforcement agencies around the state are using these drones that contain components that are manufactured in China and may be very problematic. The law enforcement agencies like it because it's cheaper to buy from China, even though there may be some security risk and issues. So what we did is pass a bill to slowly phase that out so it wouldn't have a huge cost burden on the law enforcement agencies and replace it with parts that were manufactured in countries who are not hostile to the United States. And so we had some solutions to that this last year. The governor vetoed it. These are going to continue to be big concerns, I think, for us in the years to come. And I think that'll be a focus also in this next session.
Andrew, I'll repeat the question. There has been a lot of discussion about foreign land ownership and leasing, as well as purchasing equipment containing foreign manufactured parts. What factors do you consider when attempting to balance national security concerns against free enterprise and private property rights?
Well, national security is certainly a concern, and I think we all want our communities to be safe from, foreign threats. I don't know that anyone would want to expose their community to any of those type of threats. Where this bill comes in, and I know Attorney General Kobach was pushing this bill and asked Mike to probably run it through committee. But it was a direct attack on private property rights. Originally violated fair housing, but they've carved that out. It also impedes our marketplace, delays closings. If an agricultural or say a commercial property owner would have to go in front of this panel. And so it actually disrupts our marketplace. As a matter of fact, it also has a ripple effect into the business community. I had a longtime friend of mine who happens to be a constituent of Mike Thompson's who called me very concerned about this bill. Luckily, it was the week that the governor vetoed it, and he was concerned because it was the largest deal. It actually impacted and could have blown up his largest deal of his entire career. He's not a real estate agent. He was actually selling manufacturing, basically warehouse equipment to a buyer, and this would have derailed this particular transaction. And so the business community was definitely against this. And so I would think that we could find better solutions to protect our community as opposed to have a fear-mongering bill that just, stirs up issues.
Okay, Andrew, we'll stay with you on this one. What are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion?
I am a firm believer in Medicaid expansion, period. I think a lot of times of the J.G. Wentworth commercials and think of, it's my money and I want it now. I think that we're walking away for several years from federal funds that we could be taking advantage of. As I mentioned earlier, it would create 20,000 new jobs in our state, much of which would be outside of the health care sector. We also have, as Mike mentioned, other states around us competing for those jobs and those companies and our workforce because we haven't expanded Medicaid. And so we're telling not only our workforce that we don't want to take care of them, but we're telling corporations that we don't want to have a healthy, productive workforce. And remember, many of these people that are in the gap, these are hard-working, all of them are hard-working Kansans. They just happen to be in a field like childcare or restaurant work or seasonal work where they fall into this gap where they don't make enough money or too little of money to get access to health care. And it does definitely come home because as a small business owner, I understand how hard it is to pay for health care. As the recent president of the Kansas Association of Realtors, I worked with state and federal lawmakers to help pass legislation that would expand health care access to our 10,000 plus members. And while we didn't have a legislative solution, we still rolled up our sleeves and found that affordable, attainable, quality healthcare access for our members.
Okay, Mike, what are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion?
Medicaid expansion, there's a lot of misconceptions about what that would do, and people have been basically fed a bill of goods. Kansas has been smart to stay out of Medicaid expansion. It would be one of the worst mistakes we'd ever made. In fact, there are a number of states like Idaho and Tennessee who are trying to get out of Medicaid expansion because they realize it blows up the state budget. Not only that, people don't understand that Medicaid expansion does not help the poorest of the poor, which is what Medicaid is supposed to do. Young mothers who are unwed, the disabled, the poorest of the poor who need help. Medicaid expansion is for the next group up. That's the able-bodied 18 to 64-year-old people who are capable of working and who have access to health insurance through the Affordable Care Marketplace. What it would do is increase the number of people enrolled in Medicaid in Kansas by about 300,000. So 10% of the state would suddenly come onto the welfare rolls. This would increase the cost of the state enormously, and those people who have access to health insurance through other means would suddenly lose that and be forced onto Medicaid. The low reimbursement rates of Medicaid would also accelerate the closure of rural hospitals. It would increase the wait times for those who are on Medicaid right now. It would harm those folks a lot. It would also decrease the workforce. We've seen that in every state that has accepted Medicaid expansion. I need more time to explain how bad this is, but the more we stay out, the better off we are.
All right, home stretch. I've got one final question. It's a little long, so stick with me.
Okay.
And Senator, you'll answer it first, Mike.
Okay.
How control over decision-making is divided among the state legislature and local governments, including school boards, on issues such as taxation, economic development, and education has been a matter of debate. What are your views on this issue?
Well, obviously, local control is important. It's the cities have constitutional local control or home rule. Counties are statutory and a little more subject to legislative oversight. There are situations though where I think home rule is being taken advantage of. There are situations where we can provide a statewide solution to various problems, such as energy problems around the state. Counties deal with a lot of these influx of wind and solar farms, for example, and they have to struggle with regulations. So creating a uniform approach to those types of issues would actually lend expertise to these counties. But generally, I think, to the extent that we can, local control is very important, and we need to preserve the home rule in Kansas. But again, I have been faced with situations where home rule is great until they suddenly come to the state and want some help. I've had some cities saying, hey, we need the state to do this and step in at the local level. So it is not, home rule is not sacrosanct, believe it or not, in the Constitution. The cities exist because of the Constitution of the state of Kansas. And so there are situations where home rule is not as effective as creating a single kind of a coverage from the state level that makes more sense.
Okay, Andrew, I'll repeat the question. How control over decision-making is divided among the state legislature and local governments, including local school boards, on issues such as taxation, economic development, and education have been a matter of debate. What are your views on these issues?
So I've heard from both local elected officials and school board members, and they do not want overreach from their state government. And I believe the voters of Senate 10 believe in that as well, and they trust their local governments and they trust the professionals on a school board. They definitely don't want them involved in setting curriculum. Where they want them involved is funding, fully funding their schools and making sure that there are tools available at the state like RHID to increase housing inventories at an affordable and attainable rate. They want the assistance from their government, but they don't want the overreach, because when the government starts to get involved with, say, non-discrimination ordinances, then they're taking it out of the hands of the people that actually live in that community. And that is overreach, period. Same thing with school curriculum. When our elected officials start coming to school board meetings and city council meetings and start imposing their thoughts and their views personally on what should happen as opposed to what the collective wants, that's overreach, and we need to make sure our government stays out.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We're going to move to closing statements. You each will have 1 minute to present your closing statements, given in reverse order of the opening statements. Please be sure to highlight what distinguishes you most from your opponent. Andrew, we'll start with you.
Well, again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I also appreciate being up here with Mr. Thompson. I think that there couldn't be a bigger contrast between the two candidates. I think that an elected official that focuses on economic development, the working class, the middle class, making sure that we put hard-earned dollars back into the pockets of hard-working taxpayers, making sure that we focus on helping our small businesses and keeping the government out of personal private matters, keeping the government out of local decision-making, school board decision-making. Those are what the voters of Senate District 10 want. And I want to be that person to bring that representation to the over 70% of the voters that want Medicaid expansion, and the over 90% of the students that actually attend public schools, and those voters wanting public schools to be fully funded. I will be that voice for Senate District 10 when elected on November 5th.
All right, Mike?
It's a lot of work to be a senator to do it well. It is not as simple as it sounds. You're not just filling a seat and voting for some sort of mythical idea. You actually have to go down the rabbit holes and understand what we're doing at the state level. And we have to run the state more like a business. We have to hold people accountable. We have to have transparency. I've done all of this. I'm the first one in and one of the last ones out of the State House during the session. Everybody can tell you that. I'm one of the hardest working senators there. I'm there for you. I don't have a government-centric view. I have an economic view. I look at everything through the lens of objectivity. I look at everything through the lens of what's going to be best for you and your family and how to ensure the long-term viability of the state of Kansas. I grew up in Kansas. I have 3 kids, 9 grandkids, 3 great-grandkids. I'm looking to the future. I could be sitting on the couch at home and doing nothing. But I get involved because I'm very worried about the future of the state, and I want to ensure its future success and that you can thrive.
Thank you both. This concludes our quorum for Senate District 10. Thank you, candidates, for participating in today's program.